So what's been on my mind this week? I had a conversation with a coworker about horses and slaves and white supremacy. He breeds horses. We were talking about racism and white supremacy and Nazis and shit, like people do. And I was trying to explain to him that the newfangled Nazi is trying to say that he isn't actually a racist because minorities and women are intellectually inferior based on a book written by some dumbass in the 90s named Charles Murray, called The Bell Curve. It claims that IQ is the most significant factor in determining whether or not a person will be successful in life, to the degree that one might actually achieve a functioning role in a modern civilized society. They claim they aren't racist and that it's science that's racist. At the top of the bell curve are East Asians. Below them are Ashkenazi Jews. If you don't know, an Ashkenazi Jew is a Jewish European that was raised Jewish in Europe as a byproduct of the diaspora. What genetics have to do with that, I don't know. They're ostensibly white people. Below them are just regular Caucasians, and below Caucasians are Latin Americans, Mexicans, Hondurans, Guatemalans, etc., Puerto Ricans. Below Latin Americans, way down at the bottom of the bell curve, are blacks, African Americans. Now, the bell curve leaves out a few races in their IQ test averages, but that's not even important because it's a stupid and racist measurement of intelligence on its face. We're talking about natural selection, Darwinism, racial superiority. You got a few prolific YouTubers on the right that I won't do the service of mentioning here, but in the 7 degrees of Adolf Hitler, Joe Rogan and Sam Harris in the IDW are in their orbit. That's why socially conscious leftists are packing them in with these blatant fascists, in certain arenas at least. I'm not saying any of the IDW are fascists themselves, but they have been used as useful idiots by them in certain instances and are likely not even aware of it. Well, this is something that the Nazis on YouTube never seem to consider while bringing up the bell curve studies to justify their racism while attributing it to science. Now, this is something to think about, and I don't blame you if you don't, because it's an uncomfortable thing to think about. But the reality is that the African American is the only member of this species to have ever been bred. Okay, like a horse or a dog. If you could make, let's do a little mental thought experiment here. If you could make a time machine, and go back to like Thomas Jefferson and say, I don't know, take him an iPhone and show him a basketball or an NFL game, what do you think he'd say? Because white slave traders bred black people to be big and fast and strong so that they could work as human farm equipment, they are arguably genetically superior to us being white people. I don't know. Race is a construct, right? Like, what are us, them? I don't know. My coworker, he's a good guy. He's really open-minded and smart. He grew up in rural Lehi, Utah. He breeds horses and he sells them. He knows how quickly the genetic traits of a breed can generate. Within 2 generations, and you can achieve a specimen that has all the qualities you're looking for in a horse or a dog, from stamina to temperament and even intelligence. When black slaves showed signs of intelligence, they were killed. Really intelligent blacks learned to play stupid as a survival mechanism and lived long enough to be bred. Smart members of any species don't breed in captivity, though, and that's evidenced by the endangerment of the lion and the panda. I'm getting off subject. The point is that Hitler looked at how America became a world power so quickly and realized it had to do with slavery and eugenics. The African American was tantamount to Nietzsche's Übermensch. He, she, they, black people, African American slaves, were bred to be a superhuman. Now, Hitler wanted to do something similar with the Aryan race. Nazis wanted to do the same thing with their race. And the biggest and maybe only obstacle toward that end, you want to know? It's love. They can't force members of their own race to breed for obvious reasons because it undermines their autonomy. Love is the answer. Love is wild. You can't control it. You can't oppress it or suppress it. You can't direct it. Love is the answer to fascism. You know, sorry, excuse me, Jason. Welcome to your first appearance on my podcast, buddy. You're making me burp though. Fascism created a super race. The African American is superior because they were bred to be. Racists, they just played themselves. The bell curve is bullshit. IQ can't be quantified. And they know it. So they make stupid tests to compensate for the folly of the intellect that created the stupid shit. Why would they put Asians at the top of the test they designed? You want to know why? Well, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers, and in it he explains it. He explains why Asians are good at math, and it's not genetic. It is cultural. The way they're sorry, dude. I'm coming down with like a chest cold or something. Anyway, sorry. Gladwell, in his Outliers book, in one of the later chapters, describes how Asian, well, first and foremost, you understand that their characters in their alphabet, they don't have letters. They're symbols. They're characters that represent words. And the way they count, well, they've got the same model. It's still based on 10 deca. But rather than, okay, so in English, we go from 10 to 11, which is its own thing, and then 12, which is its own thing. And then we start getting into the normative of 13. So now we start adding teen to the word. They don't do that. They actually do the math in the language. So it goes like a 10. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then their word for 11, which is complete. 11 isn't even a word. Like, what the hell is that? Oh, dude, maybe it just occurred to me. Ill even. Once it goes beyond 10, it's not even anymore. Maybe there's something to that. I'll do some research on it. But in their language, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then their word for 11 is 10 plus 1. Their word for 12 is 10 plus 2. So linguistically, they're incorporating math into their language. So and they're learning language at an earlier rate than we are. Asians they're an earthly people, by the way. Most of them are potty trained before they can even walk, which is incomprehensible to Americans. I'll talk about that later. Just Google it. Why do Vietnamese and Laotians why are they potty trained before they can even walk or talk? They are potty trained before they can walk and talk. I know it sounds ludicrous, but it's true. And there's a method to it, and it's part of the reason why they are quote unquote intellectually superior to anybody else on this planet. And it's not genetics. It's not genetics like these dumbass racists keep saying that they are. Anyway, it also has to do with the fact that rice is their staple. God, my brain is. Let me tell you something about how my brain works, as opposed to somebody like Ben Shapiro. My brain works in a deep way, like more like a Chomsky than a Shapiro. But the thing is that Shapiro's not actually smart. He's quick, but he's not deep. He's dumb, actually. Anyway, in order for rice to be cultivated as effectively as is necessary in Asia, you have to understand patterns very, very well, intimately. You have to know when floods come, generally, because they can wash out your food supply, and if your food supply is washed out, then you starve. So you have to understand nature to an extent. You have to understand geography. You have to know how to measure things, and new math is just it's a way to process numbers. It's a way to process values. So, and they're good at that, and it's informed in their language, so they get it really quickly. It's ingrained in their culture. It's not because they're nobody's genetically good at math, okay? These Nazis, they're just stupid. So racism is stupid, and the more racist and fascist you want to get, be prepared for it to bite you in the ass. We need to transcend race and embrace one another. So, okay, let's get off the subject. It's stupid. Say no to racism. It's dumb. Read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers if you have an opportunity. It's on Audible. It's fascinating, very informative, and very enlightening. So next on the mentionables this week is a sister podcast of The Intercept called Running from Cops. They've only put out 2 episodes. It's about the TV show Cops and how stupid and criminal and racist that show is. The episodes are about a half hour, and they're worth checking out if you have time to. It's one of those things where which comes first, the chicken or the egg, for racists and authoritarians. That it's not a realistic representation of the line of work police do, but most people aren't going to look at something objectively like that. They're going to assume that what they're seeing is reality, and the reality of it is that like something like 60% of the arrests on that show were of drug offenses, minor drug offenses, and they're disproportionately black. So they're or people of color, Mexicans, Latinos, men, whatever. The people that are in prison disproportionately are also disproportionately on cops. And cops actually is a product of the drug war, and they fuel each other. It's an interesting podcast. If you have a chance, check it out. And if you don't, well, basically this is why I'm making this channel, is so that I can tell you what's going on in the world of podcasts and YouTube and media that you don't have time to, because I understand you have a life. I have a life too. But it's important for me that we kind of evolve as a species in our consciousness. And I feel like Bo, the fifth column, he's a dude that's been putting up YouTube videos lately. They're short. They're less than 20 minutes long. But he puts up about 2 a day. I'm lucky if I can do 2 of these a week at this point, but he doesn't have a 9 to 5 like I do, and he does have kids, but they're old. They're old enough to not bother me while I'm trying to do this. I can't do this if Phoebe's awake or home. There's an airplane. You're gonna hear birds, and I want to do this outside, so you're probably gonna hear noise. Sorry, but it's either that or me do this at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's not gonna happen. I need to go to sleep, and I need to get my rest. So anyway, yeah, Cops, Running from Cops. Intercept, check the Intercept out. They're a great source for news. It's Jeremy Scahill. He's the dude who wrote Dirty Wars and Blackwater. He was a journalist for Democracy Now! He's an independent journalist now, and his show's really, really good, legit. And the next mentionable podcast I listened to this week, the next noteworthy, is it's a podcast called Reply All. And this week was a great story about Domino's Pizza and how they were hacked. Their cyber security was breached, and data was stolen, credit card numbers and addresses, like profiles, whatever. I'm not real familiar with the Domino's app, but credit cards were. It's a scam involving Twitter and a website called Pizza Plug. And it all centers around someone calling himself Adam Pisces. And he was ordering 20-ounce sodas of Coke online. And it's sort of like a mystery that they put into a podcast. And it's pretty interesting. I'll try to paraphrase it. I'll try to condense it so you don't actually have to listen to it. The Domino's pizza workers kept seeing orders for a 20-ounce Coke come up on their computers, on their online order system, and nobody would come to collect the Coke, and nobody would pay for it. It would just order, and then nothing. So what they figured out was people were stealing credit card numbers, ordering a Coke online, and if it went through, then they knew their credit card was usable so that they could steal shit. And if it was declined, then it would go to cash only, and Domino's computer app, I guess, for lack of a better term, was enabling people who steal compute data to verify whether or not credit cards were valid, credit card numbers, whether or not they could use them. And then other people would use those credit card numbers. Where the Pizza Plug comes into it is there was an app around colleges where you could order fucking $50 worth of pizza for $5 or $10. They just use stolen credit cards to order a bunch of pizzas and then sell them at discounted prices. Reply All as a podcast is very informative. I do highly suggest listening to it. I've learned a lot about hackers and computer crime through that. It's kind of terrifying, and it's sort of educational. Be aware. I've also spent the week talking to incels. I'm not really sure I want to get into that today. Maybe for another episode. I'm going to be honest. I soak up and soak in a ton of information on a weekly basis. But aggregating it and processing it is a very, very time consuming. Getting it together and then presenting it to you is a full-time job. I already have a full-time job, and I have a family that I neglect more than I wish I did. And I'm trying to do art and make music and do a bunch of other things. So, and sleep's nice. So these videos might have to be shorter than I want them to be in the future. I also wanted to talk about Fox News, AOC, Biden, the DNC, and the DCCC corruption, and why we're going to see another Trump term on this episode. But I'm already 18 and 40 minutes in. Trying to consolidate this stuff as quickly to as concentrated as I possibly can. But man, it's turning out to be easier to just write dissertations on Facebook than to make these videos. I'm gonna be level with you. But here's a question for you. Would you rather listen to a podcast, mine? Would you rather listen to me do a podcast or watch a video, and would you rather they be 6-10 minute episodes or a 1 hour long one? I've got project in the wings that are going to take months to really do them proper service. I think Dan Carlin. The episode my buddy Justin requested is going to take me a minute to do the research. He asked me a question, or he asked me if I'd do a show about Gnosticism and what happened, how that all came about since the Gnostics were murdered. That's a tough question because I don't think anybody really knows, man. I don't that the library at Alexandria was lost. All we got is the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi codices, and so other than that, I don't know really what else to tell you. But I will do some. I'll do some more look. I'll look farther into it. God, my brain's frazzled right now. Here's the thing, man. History is written by the victors, and the victors generally are cheaters and liars. So it's kind of tough to take history on its face value, because when you do, then you start getting called a conspiracy theorist or a revisionist historian or something like that. So I don't know. We'll see. Before I sign off, though, I did some more research on Passover, and I was thinking about what story was really trying to be told there. And what I came to understand is that it has to do with Saturn. Saturn is the god of the Old Testament. Saturn, Kronos, signifies time and death. Saturn passed over Egypt on the vernal equinox in the house of Aries, the ram. Thus the lamb's blood on the house of Aries. These are all astrological terms. They use constellations and planetary movements to tell stories and connect the dots. That's what astrology is. It's a connecting of the dots to see the big picture in the micro and the macro verses. And I'll get into Hermeticism another time, but it goes something like this: as above, so below; as without, so within. Basically, what Hermeticism is, and it has something to do with Gnosticism. Hermes Trismegistus means Hermes, the serpent, the messenger, Mercury, the caduceus. They all kind of have a common symbolic theme. I'll talk about that later if you want to. And I'll also talk about why the last time I signed off. I'm Chris Thomas, and so are you. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe.